Hi, this is Regina Y. Favors with a Favors Mentoring School topic. And so the topic is you haul your own load. I think that one of the hardest lessons that takes us a while to get to or get an understanding of is becoming an adult and taking accountability and taking responsibility for the decisions that we make. When we grow up in such an environment from infant to 18 years old, that is 18 years of conditioning from the parents, conditioning from society that we're supposed to obey the parents as well as the parents themselves. um, and then just social networks, all of that sort of churches, all of that basically sets an environment conducive for obedience or obedience to the person who has authority over us. And so, as much as parents will instruct us and assign a chore, take responsibility for a chore, it's not necessarily perceived as taking responsibility. It's perceived primarily as mom and dad told me to do something, right? Now, we don't always have the self awareness until much later in life where we see how important it is to start a goal, endure a goal, complete a goal, right? If we don't always consistently take out the trash, mom and dad will get mad, go into the room, slam the door, and then tell us to take out the trash the next day, right? Or sometimes they will still have us, or still tell us to take out the trash. And sometimes there is inconsistency in the authority that parents will dole out. That's why I think that in an authoritative home, parents should sit the kids down at the table as if we are having a meeting, right? Have like agenda items. This is what we're going to cover, right? And we're going to talk about the trash, the backyard, the front yard, the dishes, your clothes, a number of things that we parents can create a list, take that list, assign it, and give that person that part of the list for them to do, right? It'll be like a generic list, and there'll be three or four copies based upon the number of family members. And then you sign off on it, and it's like a promise, like a contract. And so you do that, and now you have something tangible in your hand. You don't have time to reason out of it. You don't have time to emotionally try to get out of it. The something in your hand, the paper in your hand, is forcing you to think logically about it. You have a list. These are the 2 to 3 items that you need to complete on this list, and you need to do it within the week or within a day, right? So then if you section if you section off assignment like that, where the where the individual, the parent is assigning a task to the different child based upon capacity, of course, and then um and then you and then the parents put it in a mindset of goal setting. Okay, set the goal. When are you going to do it? What time you're going to do it? When you come home from school, what are you going to do? So it puts individuals, kids, in a task oriented environment, so that they understand that when they come home they have specific tasks. There's the list, and they have specific tasks. Now in some homes, I will say this, that parents in my generation, I'm Generation X, so my immediate go to are baby boomers, right? And so our mother did leave a list on the table, right? And I was actually the older one, so that means I was the one reading the list, and I was doing the majority of the chores and responsibilities, because it was a latchkey situation, and I had to take care of my brothers while my mother was away at work, things like that, right? And so I actually learned about instructions, not necessarily from my mother giving me instructions, and not necessarily from reading the list that she left on the table. I learned instructions when I had to cook for my siblings and read the instructions on the box. So I had to do a lot of hamburger helper type meals. And so I would read the instructions, apply the instructions, and then the meal came out good. And I remember my brother some years later saying that he liked what I cooked. And so that's how I learned really instructions, because I remember that more than, say, the yelling that a mother or father sort of doles out. Sometimes the instructions get lost in the yelling, right? So then that was my load. My load was also being the eldest, um, having to take care of my siblings, having to be latchkey, having to cook for them, having to wash, having to clean the house. My load was heavy because I was the oldest. I was the girl, and my two siblings were 4 and 3 years apart. So I carried the load as almost like a second mother, even though I wasn't the mother, of course. So that's how I learned about load. I remember carrying loads when we didn't have a washer and dryer. And I remember carrying loads to the neighborhood washateria. And so I've always had to deal with loads, right? The load that my mother put on me from the time I was a child until somewhat till adult. Her frustrations, her projections, right? Her provocations, that load, the load of having to deal with two siblings who showed no respect, right? The load of having to go to school, being in school, trying to get my schoolwork out, trying to learn new things, of course. That load, the load of maybe being in infatuation with someone, right? That kind of load. So there have been multiple loads that I have had to experience. And then there were loads where I created that were unnecessary for me. That happened when I left the house before my time. I moved in with a boy, um, and we were together for a good minute, and then it went south really quickly. And then I ended up getting back on track, getting into an apartment, keeping a job, etc. But then distractions come along. No matter how stable you try to push for yourself to be, even if you don't really have a consciousness or awareness of what stability is, the more that you try to do that, the easier it becomes to get distracted, because it's like the kid who draws something, a stick figure on a construction paper, and then turns around and shows it to the mother or the father. Look what I did, right? Or they put a puzzle together, or they put clothes on their dolls and bears, and then they want to go and show it off. Well, that's how it is hard for you. That's how it could be easy for you to become unstable, especially financially, if you go and get something that you can pay for, then you want to now show it off, then all you've done is revealed your hand. You have let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. So then when people know what you have, it's much easier for them then to come along and say, hey, can I have what you have, without using those words, without necessarily using those words. And they will test you, maybe ask for $5 here or $10 here, 25, to the point that they get very bold and they decide to ask you for $100. People will definitely do that as well, right? They'll start asking you for more, and then somehow they'll stop paying you back because, hey, you understand where I come from. You understand that I need this. You have it anyway. I mean, why don't you just let me have it? Okay. So then the load is transferring from the money that you owe, the money that you work for, and the bills that you have to pay, to now moving to fund someone else's lifestyle, right? They are planning their lifestyle around your finances. So then your load increases. And you don't think about it at the time as being such a bad thing, because you do, in your mind, make enough money to take care of yourself. And there's nothing wrong with maybe giving a friend some money. The problem with that, however, is the more that you are giving to that person, the less that person is hauling their own load. If they have to turn around and come to you and ask you for money on a repeated, consistent, persistent basis, they are missing some steps. They are missing some steps in their understanding about life. That person is not your child. So if your child comes and asks you for $1 or $5 or whatever, that's a given. That is actually appropriate, because the child is not an adult. And the child has to depend on an adult in order to function in life, right? But if you got an adult coming to you repeatedly asking you for money, like it has moved almost to like a weekly thing and you didn't even notice it, okay, then you are hauling their load as well as your own. And you can't live like that. This is something that I had to learn when I was in college and I was getting a lot of school money. And I ran off at the mouth and told a person that I was, getting the school money. And so then, unbeknownst to me, the person started to target me, and to target me to ask me for money. And I said, well, I kind of got it. It's not that big of a deal or whatever. But then I was missing out on the process of saving, of managing what I had after I paid my tuition. I was missing some financial steps, learning steps, preparation steps, because then when I graduated, I didn't have any money. And then when I gave the person the money and I needed my rent, because I ended up giving them that money, when it was a gift from me, when I needed it back, it was a loan to me. So then not only did I have to give that money back, then they would turn around and ask for some money even more. And so then that became a cycle that I didn't realize I was in. And I had to actually begin praying and saying, I can't do this anymore. Lord, please help me to come up with a decision, make a change here. And so he gave me a solution, and I was able to stop giving the person, and that I kind of reversed it, that it was a loan to them, that it was no longer a gift anymore, that it was a loan. So if you need it, if you're claiming that you need it, okay, but it's going to be a loan to you. And so then that creates a different type of dynamic when people can't control you anymore. And when they can't control you anymore, they despise, they have contempt for you, they begin to be skeptics of your life. They begin to criticize you. They talk behind your back. They provoke you to anger. So not only do you have the load of initially giving them money and them loaning it back to you, you now have the load of having to deal with that dynamic of taking responsibility for your life and managing your finances, because you are an adult. That's what it is. It is the most simple answer to the problem, that you are an adult and you have to cover yourself and make sure that you have what you need as an adult. I say this all the time. If your rent is $1,200 and you have $1,200 savings in the bank, and someone comes to you and asks you for $200, you don't have it to give. Just because you have a $1,200, that doesn't mean that you have extra money. That means you have next month's rent. Because if something happened between you and your job, you would need at least the next month's rent to sort of hold you over while you at least apply for unemployment, right? If you give it a month. So just because you have something. Now, if you had a 6 month emergency plan, I mean, emergency savings, okay, well, it depends on your financial plans. If your financial plans were to save 6 months worth of your rent, then you still don't have it. If you had 12,000, well, 1,200 times five, right? What is that? 6,000. Okay, if you have that in the bank, that doesn't mean that you actually have the money. You just have your 6 months emergency. Now, if you have 12 months of savings, okay, then you may have the money. But it wouldn't be a good idea to tell anybody that you have that, because then they will expect you to pay their rent up. So as an adult, if you look at it as being an adult and understanding that you have to manage and cover yourself as an adult, then you're going to be in the mindset of making adult based type of decisions. The problem with that is when you go back to how we were raised, and how we were not necessarily raised in a goal setting environment. There was the task of telling you to, or the instruction of telling you to take out the trash. But if parents would sit down at the table with their children and set it up like a meeting, then it puts everyone in a sort of business mindset about the particular task that each person has to complete. They start, they endure, they complete. So when you find yourself having to U-Haul someone else's load, somewhere they stopped. They started something for which they did not know if they had the capacity to do it. They got into it quickly, or they didn't do their homework, or they didn't count up the cost. And so then they are struggling in the enduring part because they haven't reached completion. And when you come in and you intervene and you say, hey, I got it, let me volunteer, I got it, people please, try to make them happy, try to make it soothing for them, try to work things out for them, all that does is get in the way of their endurance process. They have to endure what they started. They started it. So the onus is on them. The responsibility is on them to complete what they start. It is not on you to complete what they started. Because if you complete what they started, you will never complete what you need to start in your own life. And if you want to get off track, if you literally want to get off track and stay in distraction, just be everything to everybody uh, without boundary. And that's where I went wrong. When I gave money away, when I let someone come live with me, when I helped people without consequence, without um, um, talking to them about it and trying to get it back, those decisions, those early decisions that I made in haste or irresponsibility, not taking responsibility or something, they caught up with me much later in life, where after I lost my job, I had to go live with family, and then I was struggling with family. Had to go live in homeless shelters. Then I was then I was homeless for a bit outside. I mean, it was just a mess. Then I got back on track, and it was in 2013 where I set the financial goal to become financially stable. So that meant that I needed to prioritize me, my finances. There was an instance where I got off track, where I was dealing with a relationship. And all that told me at the time, when I reflect on it now, that I was getting in the middle of that person's process. That person had the same type of financial issues, life issues, and I was trying to save him from what he was doing. But he didn't need my help. He didn't want my help. He didn't need my help. He never accepted my help. And as a result of his exposure to me, he never changed, because I wasn't assigned to help him. Sometimes you can be assigned to show somebody the way, and then that's the end of your assignment. When you try to extend it to make it become something else, that's when it goes wrong and you don't achieve whatever it is that you think you are supposed to achieve. Because anyone who leaves your presence should be changed, but he never changed. He never improved. He stayed exactly the same. And now, to my in my defense, he was kind of like that prior to me meeting him. However, I still contend that anyone who leaves your presence after an experience with you should be changed, should know better, should know different, right? So I ended up U-hauling his load as well as my own, and almost ran myself into the ground, burning myself out trying to be everything that he needed when he didn't even outline his needs. He never told me what he needed. He never said, as a matter of fact, he never said that he needed me. He never said it. He never declared it. And so that's why when we are U-hauling loads that don't belong to us, that is exactly what it is. That the person didn't come to you for help. You just volunteered. And when you volunteer, you never sit down to figure out what's going on and what the actual problem is and how you can really help and what your solution is and what the limits of your solution is. Sometimes it's not always a money issue. Sometimes it's not always you needing to put money on a problem. Sometimes it's just straight up wisdom and instruction that they ignored when they were 18, 19, 20 years old, breezed by in their 30s, and now they're in their 40s and 50s and they're forced to learn it and they're still trying to jump over it. And so sometimes it's just wisdom that you need to give them. And if they can't accept the wisdom, they're definitely not going to accept the money. They can take the money, but the money won't change them. That's the situation that happened with the guy. He took the money, but he was not changed. So when you are U-hauling your load, you are looking at yourself from a spiritual standpoint, from a mental, psychological, financial. Do you have it to give? Do you have it? Do you have the capacity? Look at who you are as an individual. Take account of what you are responsible for as an adult. And then you have to assess, do I have this? And then you further have to assess, is this person hauling their own load? Especially if they keep coming to you with the exact same issue. If it's the exact same issue, then they have a struggle enduring a goal that they set, because it's good for people to set, endure, and complete goals. But when you intervene and interfere and get in the way, you're hindering their process. And then, therefore, you are not developing where you need to develop to ensure that you consistently you haul your own load. So, this is Favors Mentoring School. You haul your own load. Visit ReginaYFavors.com for more tips. I think it's the mentoring tab. And then visit Amazon.com, /author/ Regina Y. Favors for all of the different titles. Thank you very much for listening.